Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. This is a massive pile of solid-state drives, and this is part 4 of a multi-part series on the history of SSDs on our channel, 2016 to 2022. Even though this is being recorded in January of 2023, let's be honest, basically it's the end of 2022. For those of you who just randomly came across this video, thank you. Watch part 1 first. Linked in the video description below will be the playlist of all the parts. This is part 4. They're not meant to be watched out of order. The content in them is a little bit random. However, as I talk about each drive and I talk about the accumulated history of them, I am assuming that you've heard everything I've said so far. So, if you've watched parts 1, 2, and 3 already, thank you very much. Appreciate your support. The fact that you're still here makes you guys all awesome. And without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's get into this. Buy Windows 10 Professional for $15, activate instantly online with Microsoft, and keep it forever. Don't pay full price. Get the best deal from our sponsor, URCD Keys, using our link in the video description below. Full details on how this amazing deal works at the end of the video. Speaking of Gigabyte SSDs, the last one was a perfectly fine, reasonable performer and a copy of every other first-gen Gen 4 drive. This is a reasonable performer and a copy of every other S10 Phison drive on the market, using a controller that came out in 2014. This drive came out in 2018. SSDs are SSDs. Updated with firmware, TLC support, etc. These were nothing special. They sent me these because they were sending me a little bit of everything they had back then. I couldn't tell you where and when I used these. These probably ended up in a build video somewhere. I don't have either of these drives anymore. They sent me a 256 gig version and a 512 gig version. I used them in something and they ended up somewhere. I don't know if I gave them to somebody, if I sold them, or if they were in a build that I sold. A bonus point to whoever can tell me in the comment section below what video these things were used in, because I cannot for the life of me. In fact, I didn't even remember they existed until I was digging through the pile for this going, oh yeah, oh, they made SATA SSDs. Why did they do that? They're not bad. They're just like every other carbon copy SSD from the era. Fine, but unremarkable. Everybody raise your hands if you knew that AMD made SSDs.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
You can all put your hands down. AMD doesn't make SSDs. AMD never made SSDs. These are contract manufactured, so they can put a pretty Radeon R3 logo on the box. These are made by a company called Galt, G-A-L-T, okay, who also provided support. These were launched in 2016, and probably they were made to support the upcoming Zen CPUs and try to sort of have a broader portfolio for a very, very brief time. AMD also had RAM branded with Radeon RAM on it, which is sort of like, sure, try to build the whole PC, why don't you? Wisely, they got out of it. In fact, here's the hilarious thing. Compatible with Intel and AMD platforms. So it's an AMD and it actually has Intel's name with, of course, a registered trademark symbol around the side of it. This, again, I wish I could tell you what in the world this was used in. At some point, you've used so much of this stuff and so much time has passed, I don't remember. Some of you may be watching this going, dude, if you're going to sit down and do this history, you should look all these drives up. Do you know how many hours it would take for me to look up everywhere I could have possibly used? I would have to go through so many videos. I mean, I just wouldn't. I'm kind of sort of hoping that you guys can find them all. I'm hoping the comment section is littered with a, dude, I remember the video you used that in. That's so cool. Where's that drive now? I don't know. I don't even know if they sent this to me or I bought it. I don't know how it got to me. Now, AMD did sample me the Ryzen launch, which was very cool. I was very excited about that. And I gave it a good review, and I was very happy with it, and I made it my primary desktop, and I've used a lot of Ryzen systems since. My current PC at home right now is a Ryzen. I just finished building a new Ryzen 9 7950X, and boy, is that thing a beast. So there you go. This, on the other hand, this can be kind of forgotten. Like Gigabyte, PNY is known for their video cards, not so much for their motherboards. PNY also makes video cards. I'm sure they make something else. I've never used it. Now, I've used a variety of PNY video cards. If you're looking for something budget, they do pretty well. Premium? I don't know that I would buy a premium PNY card. Most of the PNY cards that I have physically touched were cheaply made, to say the least. Yes, they can sometimes be a little less expensive, and if you're buying a $250 video card, it's not that big a deal, but if you're buying an $800 video card, maybe buy an MSI or Gigabyte or Asus. Well, this is a PNY SSD, which they did not make because none of these companies outside of Samsung, Crucial, and a few others actually make SSDs. This is a first-gen Gen 4 drive. It claims 5.6 gigabytes per second. I had a look at several reviews, and it does not do 5.6 gigabytes per second. It does 5 gigabytes per second because this is a first-gen drive with a Phison controller. So it is a copy of the Gigabyte drive. It is a copy of the Sabre Rocket 4.0 drive, and they all were this drive with different boxes and labels. Now, the plus side is this did bring prices down, and this did commoditize the SSD market, but what you end up with is a lot of drives that look fancy and aren't. And maybe these made sense, or you found one on a deal, or you found one cheap, and you're like, hey, that's $50 less than the Samsung, or that's $50 less than Western Digital, or that's $50 less than Crucial. Okay. But if the prices are close, which they are now, it's sort of water under the bridge. Now, if any of you have this drive, well, there's absolutely zero reason to get rid of it. It's just like all the other drives, perfectly fine, serviceable, even in modern systems. Put this in a modern Raptor Lake or a Zen 4 system, no big deal. Even as a boot drive, no big deal. I mean, if you already own it, sure, go for it. But definitely as a secondary drive or tertiary drive. Beyond that, it's one of those things that just, it clutters the market for no real point because it isn't their specialty. If I'm not careful, this will become a running theme. This is a Patriot Viper generic NVMe SSD like every other one I've covered, but this one is a Gen 3, 3.5 gigabytes per second. This is Phison's E12 controller with Toshiba 64-layer TLC NAND, 700,000 IOPS, 1.6 petabyte, terabyte drive write life rating, 3-year warranty. It's the most generic thing ever. It does have SLC cache. It does have a DRAM buffer. It's a premium performance drive. There's nothing wrong with it. There was a time where this might have been a little bit cheaper than the other options and it would have made sense, but that's water under the bridge. But perhaps most importantly, if you take anything else out of this video, it's this. An awful lot of SSDs are copies of something. Very, very few of any of this stuff is actually, there's a couple, but most is not unique. Most of what we've covered is not unique. This is basically like the Sabre Rocket 3.0. 3.5 gigs per second, TLC, SLC cache, DRAM buffered, good performance, good Phison controller, no issues, except you may not get any firmware updates, you may not get great support, and it's sort of an oddball item. If this sort of thing is cheap enough, sure. I get asked this quite often, like when I make a recommendation saying just go buy a Samsung 980 Pro. Inevitably, I get people who comment, what about this drive? It's $20 less. You're going to spend $180 on a Samsung 980 Pro, and $160 is enough of a better deal to motivate you to buy an SSD that doesn't come from an SSD company that specializes. Samsung is known for their software and their firmware and their updates, their warranty, and their completely fuss-free experience. Why do you want to save $20 that bad? Yeah, it's probably just as good. Yeah, if it's just $20 cheaper, it's probably a very similar drive. The differences used to be $100. And at $100 difference, I understand, which is why I've covered so many drives in the past. But they're not $100. I have probably mentioned Samsung 472 times in these 3 parts. One of the reasons is Samsung makes their own NAND, they make their own controllers, and they make their own drives. It's vertically integrated. They are often one of the most expensive options available, but they make every single piece of the drive. You get an integration and a level of support that you cannot obtain when PNY or Patriot or Gigabyte buys a Phison controller and Toshiba NAND and has the circuit board printed at Foxconn in China and the thing's just delivered with a sticker on it that says one of those companies. SK Hynix is one of the 3 actual makers of memory in the world. This drive is one of their very early ones. Now, the S31 Gold is very easy to confuse with the P31 Gold. This is a SATA drive. There is also an NVMe version of this drive, which is also very nice. This features an SK Hynix controller. This features SK Hynix NAND. It is TLC NAND. This is made by SK Hynix. This is fully vertically integrated, just like Samsung. The difference is Samsung has been making SSDs for a decade, and SK Hynix has not. However, I'm not telling you to buy this drive. But it's not even sold anymore anyway. It's irrelevant. If you did buy one of these, it's fine. It's nothing remarkable. But SATA SSDs haven't really been remarkable for a while now. The Samsung 850 EVO many years ago was kind of the last really remarkable drive, and everything after that is just, hey, it's about that fast. Okay, the 860 EVO is a tiny bit faster than an 850 EVO. Who cares? This is fine. The P31 Gold, which is a Gen 3 NVMe, is fine. This is the really interesting one that we'll talk about here in a second. But SK Hynix has an ability that only Micron, Samsung, and they really have, which is to do the controller, the NAND, and the production of the drive and the software all in one bout, where the whole thing is really holistically designed to run really, really well together, which nobody else can do. The SK Hynix P41 Platinum is quite possibly the fastest NVMe SSD in the world. This is faster than a Samsung 980 Pro, and it gives a Samsung 990 Pro a real solid run for its money. Allow me to read some numbers for you because they're hard to memorize when I don't have a script in front of me. Remember, this is unscripted. This has the SK Hynix Aries controller. It has SK Hynix LPDDR4 DRAM cache. It has SK Hynix 176-layer TLC NAND, 7 gigabytes per second sequential read, 6.5 gigabyte per second sequential write. Nice, but who cares? It's random that we care about. How about 1.4 million IOPS? That's a lot. That's read. 1.3 million IOPS random write, AES 256-bit security, and 1.2 petabytes of drive write life and a 5-year warranty. NVMe 1.4, PCI Express Gen 4 lanes. This one is a 2 terabyte size. I had to look at it for a second. These things are absolute beasts. Now, the Samsung 990 Pro is performance competitive with this. It's debatable which one is really faster. If you like Samsung, buy the Samsung. If you want to try something different and you want something where every single thing is made by one company, consider giving the SK Hynix P41 Platinum a try. I showed you the S31 Gold earlier. They also made the P31 Gold, which was their NVMe drive, so they've now made a couple of them. That's good. I wouldn't want to buy their first drive necessarily. But this thing has been getting rave reviews from a lot of people who do more intensive SSD testing than I do. What I will tell you is that the numbers and the testing results that I have seen tell me that this lives up to what you would expect. In fact, if you look at some of the Samsung 990 Pro reviews, several reviewers have said doesn't quite catch the P41 Platinum. That's high praise. This, I'm ashamed to say, is actually still sealed in the box. I have not used this yet. I should have, but I have not. So I can't tell you from personal experience how great it is. Yes, I know it's absolutely tragic that I have this sitting on the shelf. It will go into something. I just don't know what yet. SanDisk is not a name that you hear as much as you used to. Maybe more in SD cards and flash drives, but not in SSDs. But we used to. It used to be a major name. Until Western Digital bought them for like $19 billion. Western Digital has a lot of money. We'll get to Western Digital. This is a drive that I've covered multiple times on the channel. I covered this 6 years ago. This has been used in a build. This drive almost certainly went into one of the i5 2400 Dell Optiplex machines that I did various builds on. It's 240 gig budget DRAM-less drive. That makes sense. That's where it would have ended up. The interesting thing about these drives, and it's also true of the next two SanDisk drives I'm going to show you as well, SanDisk was doing the same thing that ADATA has done, except for some reason I don't remember SanDisk getting flack for it. So Tom's Hardware reviewed 3 of these, the 120, the 240, and the 480. All 3 had different controllers. All 3 had different types of NAND. One was DRAM, one had DRAM and the other 2 did not. And they all came in the same box. And somehow SanDisk did not get flack for this.
Wait a minute. How did this happen? We're smarter than this.
Apparently not.
Yeah. Don't use one of these today. Unless you just left it in an old machine. Okay, if you have one of these in an i5 2400 Dell Optiplex that you put together for $300 in 2017, that's fine. Leave it there. It should stay there for the rest of its life. And if you retire that machine, retire the drive. Don't move it to anything modern. It's a complete waste of time. Rather than cutting and doing all that, we're just going to quickly cover these. We have the SanDisk Ultra 3D, and we have the SanDisk Ultra 2. I actually have had 4 of these. I used them for editing drives for a while before moving to NVMe. I think I only had 1 or 2 of the Ultra 3Ds. The Ultra 3D, if memory serves, came first. The Ultra 2 came second, which makes sense because it has 2 in the name. I am not going to sit here and read specs to you. I'm not going to talk to you endlessly about them, other than to say they are much better drives in general than the SSD Plus. My Ultra 2s, I had 4 of them in a RAID 0 array plugged into my HEDT high-end desktop machine. I used them for YouTube video editing. I used them as a scratch drive, basically. Those were 960 gig. Is this actually the box to one of those? No, this is a 480. Okay. Well, I have the boxes somewhere to the 960 gig drives. I had 4 of them. I've since sold them. Those were TLC, SLC cached, DRAM buffer drives. But there's a trick. They did not have a full-size DRAM buffer on them. The DRAM buffer was not 1 gigabyte of DRAM per 1 terabyte of storage. I think it was a quarter. I think if memory serves, it had 256 megs. But I could be wrong. So it definitely is not as good as some of the modern drives like Samsung and Crucial, etc. But they were perfectly fine. They gave me no trouble and no fuss whatsoever. I used them for a number of years before moving on from them. And if you have one, you can absolutely keep using it. If you're moving to a new machine and it's your boot drive, please, for all that is love, that is good and holy, make it your secondary or tertiary drive. Make it a backup game drive. Make your boot drive a nice, proper NVMe drive. But yeah, if I didn't already have an overabundance of storage, I would absolutely be happy to continue using either one of these drives in a modern machine as a second, third, fourth drive for games or other applications, basically to replace a hard drive for those applications. I have extensively talked about ADATA's drives already. Now it's time to move on to ADATA's premium drives. I've got 2 here. These are Gamix S50 Lights. These are TLC, SLC cache, DRAM buffered, Gen 4 drives. Sort of. These don't do 7 gigabytes per second. They don't do 5. They do 3.9 in read, 3.2 in write. Those are Gen 3 speeds. They do 500,000 IOPS on the 2 terabyte size and 380,000 IOPS on the 1 terabyte size. That's Gen 3 performance. It's really, really good Gen 3 performance. If you compare an S50 Lite to a Samsung 970 EVO Plus, these are really, really nice drives. If you compare this to a Samsung 980 Pro, it's kind of sad. Price is everything. Now, I just looked at Amazon. These aren't available anymore. They probably don't make them anymore, so it's irrelevant at this point for new. This video is not about new purchases except for 2 drives, which if you watch part 1, you know what those are already. I'll mention them later. So if you own one of these, keep it. I have 2 of them. And one of these is in my son's PC, and one of these is... Where's the other one of these? You know, I think we put it on our test bench now that I think about it. I think I was going to put one of these in our PlayStation 5, but I don't think this has the performance to run a PlayStation 5. So it's probably not going to go into our PlayStation 5. I think it's... I don't know where it is. Look, that might sound like a ridiculous statement to some of you, but if you've seen the number of SSDs that we've got or have touched, we don't have all of these. As I said in the first video, a lot of these boxes are empty and we have since sold or disposed or given away or otherwise no longer have the drives, but we've used them all, and so they definitely all blend together. But I do know that we have still both of these drives. One's on my son's machine. I think one's on my test bench. It's definitely in the testing room, whether it's on a test bench or whether it's on the spare shelf to use for something. I forget which. These drives are one of the worst Gen 4 drives and one of the best Gen 3 drives ever. It's such a weird thing to say. The specs would be mind-blowingly awesome for Gen 3. But they are decidedly for Gen 4. Micron 96-layer TLC. DDR4 no less. 1.5 petabytes of drive write life. That's not bad. Looking for a Windows 10 or 11 product key, but you don't want to spend $100 to $200 for it? Our sponsor, URCD Keys, provides discounted Windows keys at amazing prices. $15 for Windows 10 Professional, $21 for Windows 11 Professional, and just $60 for Microsoft Office 2021 Professional Plus. These product keys are the real deal. They activate directly with Microsoft Online, link to your Microsoft account, and they work forever. For Windows, you simply go to Settings, Update and Security, Activation, click Change Product Key, paste the key provided by URCD Keys, and in seconds, you're activated with Microsoft. For Office, go to setup.office.com, sign in with your Microsoft account, paste the product key provided by URCD Keys, and then download Office 2021 Pro Plus directly from Microsoft. Remember to use the discount code TD20 to save 25% off the already deeply discounted prices and support our channel at the same time. We have been using product keys from URCD Keys for almost 5 years now without any issues and encourage you to do so as well. Thank you once again to everybody who has reached the end of the video. Y'all are awesome. 2 gold stars for all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, and do all of the YouTube things. For those of you who have been watching part 1 through part 4, you will notice that the ending to part 3 and the ending to part 4 look very similar. And if you didn't, well, that's okay. I don't mind, but they are because I filmed them back to back. We changed the order and how we're doing this a little bit, and I ended up filming some new intros and some new outros that we inserted, which is why the pile of drives looks a bit different. Regardless, there will be 2 more upcoming parts, Part 5 and Part 6, linked in the video description below. For those of you who are YouTube members, meaning at the silver level and higher, $2 a month or $20 for the entire year, you can watch those early. They will be published a few weeks apart out over time. You can also watch them with early access over on Floatplane, which There are still some of you over there. Thank you very much for that. And of course, if for whatever reason you're unable or don't want to financially directly contribute, I understand. That's okay. Your viewership and your likes and comments are appreciated. Those will publish in due time, and then you can watch the entire series. And of course, if you're watching this in 2024 somehow, they're all public and you can watch them all. No big deal. Thank you very much for being here. I will see all of you in part 5.